Big Mecha. Big Mecha.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new edition of Big Mecha, but not huge. Today, I have a brand new special guest with me. Someone that you have not heard before on Toku For Tw. He is my very good friend. I believe he goes by Godzilla Don, but, let's see if he chooses that name today. What are we going by your name today, sir?
You can go with Godzilla or if you feel like shortening it, you can do Don. That works
Don?
too. Or Zilla.
Don G? Alright. I'll call you Don
Don
G.
G.
And
There we
then
go.
it's just going to be Dong. We'll go with that.
There it
Just like
is.
Dong
Capital
Lover.
G.
Like
Capital
Don
G.
Glover. Donald Glover, but Dong Lover. That's such a weird thing that he does. Anyways, this is my good buddy Godzilla Don. We both are really big into mecha content. Tell me, what was your first thing or your first foray into mecha media?
Foreplay.
Yeah, four-way. I mean, they all come in
Uh,
spider legs.
at some point, there's tentacles somewhere.
Exactly. So, what was your first thing that brought you
Uh,
into mecha?
I mean, if we're gonna go all the way back,
Yeah, I want to go all the way
I
back.
so I don't know if I can clearly. I would have to genuinely look when certain things aired at what point.
Uh huh.
I'm going to say it would be when I was a kid,
When
really
I was
young.
a young boy. Go ahead.
Power. Yep, when I was a young warthog. The oh fuck, we can't have that in
No,
there.
we'll have it in there. It'll stay in there.
But it would probably be big. Actually, this probably goes back to Godzilla movies because in Godzilla movies they come from the Toku era, and I remember watching really early in the morning. I'm pretty sure it was the original Ultraman on rerun because as a 90s kid, the
hmm
60s and the 70s were on reruns. So I remember watching the original Ultraman probably at that point on rerun, probably in English, while I got ready for school. I watched old Godzilla movies, which of course have multiple giant robot everything.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of giant mecha in that series, so technically it would be that, but then I watched, of course, Power Rangers, the first iteration heavily, and then the movie, and then I kind of fell off of it, but it was there. And then I watched weird stuff like I was the only person I've ever met who watched the Techno Man, which was the Japanese show Tekka Man Blade,
Man,
dubbed in
that's
English.
still on my wish list.
I have the DVDs, I'll let you borrow them. It's a wonderful show, insanely dark. Jesus, the ending to that show. I love it, but God, the ending is rough. Uh, but that show, Techno Man, was on UPN when I was a little kid. So, and I
Oh,
consider that Mecha. Yeah, there you go, UPN anime. Remember
yep,
that?
yep. That is old.
uh, yeah, and then from there, the stuff that you just wound up bumping into. I watched Voltron when it was on Toonami,
Mhm.
back when Moltar did it, because I'm old enough to have pre
I'm gonna let you
done
pause
before
there for a
Tom.
second, just because
So,
this is mecha adjacent because of Thundercleese and the Brack show. But every single day this week, I have this clip that I saved from TikTok, and it's Brack and Zorak is all right. What do you want to do? And then Brack is like, "Do you want to make love, darling?" And Zorak just lays into him, and goes like, "What did you just say to me? I wasn't talking to you. I was thinking about my wedding night. What?" Sorry, I had to say that. It's just it's coded in me now.
that yeah. If we go back to the beginning, it would be those, and then as you get a little older, uh, the Zoids with Bit Cloud, and then
Hell yeah,
the
BitCloud
other
64.
Zoids show with Zoids Battle Century,
hmm
which was much more of an actual storyline. And then I fell off of Zoids, and I didn't watch the next like seven shows. But yeah, it's going back that far would probably be that. Oh, and then of course mecha influences are all over the place. Again, being in the 90s, that's when cultures were really meshing together. So people like Gendy Tartakovsky were throwing in giant robots into Dexter's lab and stuff.
Are you talking
So
about that episode where
there's
they
your
all end
mecha.
up going to Japan and they go
Well, that one,
Go Dexter's family,
Dexter
go.
Family.
Do do do
That
do
one
do 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 do
specifically
do.
is heavily just a beautiful homage to tokusatsu as a cinema type.
Yes, it was.
But
This is why I
Dexter
need
had a
you on
giant
Toku for
robot
two.
themed to
This
himself.
is why I need you on a
Oh,
special episode of Toku for two. That way we can go in on
that's
that.
fair.
I'm sure that Christian
But
and Ryan would love you on that.
yeah, it's just, I mean, going back that far, it is the Godzilla and then just other stuff because realistically, Mecha, once it entered the public consciousness, just kind of went everywhere. I mean, I
Hmm.
watched Transformers shows when I was a kid. You got Transformers Armada and a bunch of other ones, and then just robots in general. I've always thought robots were cool. The Iron Giant is still an amazing movie.
Don't forget Big Guy
Um,
and Rusty the Boy Robot.
um,
You don't remember
oh,
that?
that's almost in my head. What?
Oh man, that's the one
Oh,
where
that
it's the
sounds really
big like
familiar.
1950s giant robot, but it's a
Hmm.
cartoon and it's based off of a comic. And Rusty the Boy Robot, he basically looks like an American Astro Boy, and the voice is Bobby Hill.
Okay, yeah, I that sounds really familiar. I think
Yeah,
I have did not watch much of that, but I
it was a
vaguely
really good
remember that
show.
show.
It was a really good show. So before we go into my different mecha history, what would you say is your most favorite thing in mecha history?
I think that's really vague. What are we talking about for things
Just
like genre, type,
anything that
trope?
pops out to you is like your most go-to thing when it comes to mecha.
So I think do a fun little bit of psychology. I know that I really like robots, and I think mecha is just one of those things that can do so much that my brain, and I love science fiction, my brain really likes all the different things you can do with mecha because you can go the completely goofy, silly super robot route where it's all about like feelings and friendship and Go Danar is a wonderful, silly anime that heavily goes into marriage and has like one of the best fucking speeches I have ever seen.
I
I forgot
own
to
it.
ask my
I have
person.
not bought it. I mean, I have not watched it yet.
There is a speech from the main character in that fucking show where he basically lays out how marriage works, and I'm like, that is way too accurate to be in a show about giant robot with flaming hair that punches things. What the fuck am I watching?
Yeah, that
And
here that's about
he
as weird as Bring Babe Bravern.
oh no, Bang Bravern is just,
Yeah,
I don't want to boil that. That show is amazing. You should watch it. I don't want to boil it down too hard. It is also hilarious, but that show is
apparently the guy has relations with the giant robot.
not when it's a giant robot, but it's it
Uh,
is it is two men falling deeply in love with each other over the course of a show and then a bunch of weird, silly sci-fi robot shenanigans. And it's great. It is a great show.
I'm
It
down
has
for it.
it's so good. It's so dumb, but it's so good. There are moments
I'm
in it that are
definitely down for
so
that then.
stupid. Oh, it leans so hard into the tropes. It knows that it is. They never wink to the camera, but the writers knew what the hell they were doing. The fact that the ending never changes and the ending is just the two main characters shirtless singing to each other and it's like they're on a stage because it
Wait,
does the
the
whole
show's
like
over?
well the show finished. It was only like 12
Really? I
episodes.
didn't know that.
Yeah. No, it's a
Oh.
normal, like modern short anime. It's really good, but it was only like 12 or 13 episodes. It's already over. And the ending, like the credit song,
Hmm.
is the two of them looking moody, and the song is like piano, and they're singing, and I can tell because I'm watching in Japanese. I'm pretty sure it's the two voice actors because one of the fun things about Japan is they make voice actors do singing so that it helps with voice and like, how good you are with it and all of that. But they also will routinely get the cast from a show to sing like the opening and the ending,
Yeah, kind of like with the
which
Excel Saga.
yeah, there's a lot of anime that do it. I'm gonna go out on a thing right now and say that I miss some things from like 90s anime. That's one of the things I miss. I miss when they got the American voice cast to sing, or they got somebody, they hired someone to like Disney redo the Japanese opening for a show, like Yu Yu Hakusho. I didn't realize I had only ever heard the opening in English until I tried to watch it on Crunchyroll, and I was like, "Oh, this is the Japanese opening." Oh my God, that's literally the English open. Holy shit, they translated the whole thing and did it to the same beat.
I
That's
mean,
awesome.
that reminds me of One Piece because you know how I went on my One Piece binge for a solid month, where for like
Um,
the first 7 seasons, I think they actually did the American English versions of those Japanese songs, and then
okay,
after
but
that, they just kind of gave up.
that's not the true opening of One Piece, though. The true opening is Daigo. Daigo. Oh
All
God,
right, we're
that
getting
really terrible
we're
rap
getting off
opening.
track here.
Oh,
um,
that's fun.
so out of all those, what would you consider as like the one that? Well, you said Tekka Man, right?
Well, so I think the thing that I like about Mecha is the fact that you can tell so many different stories. You can do the thing that sci-fi likes to tap into, which is the philosophy of what is human, what is life. You can have the stakes of entire species and all of that going away, an entire universe. You have, I'm not gonna, that would be a spoiler. You have the what makes you human because there are giant robots and they
Wait,
routinely
spoiler for
will
what?
have the robot.
Spoiler for
I don't want to
what?
say. I don't want to say.
Say it. Say it.
Bang, bang, Bravern.
Okay.
There is, like episode 4 or 5. You'll get there. It's fine. But that does the what makes you you, which is something I like to follow a lot in media. It's what makes something like itself. So, what is the core of a living creature? Is it the body, the mind, both? Is there a soul? What are we doing here? Like, what's going on? What is the consciousness? You could do that really easily with Mecha because it's a robot. So, stuff's always getting like transferred around and copied, and that robot is sentient, this one isn't. But you can go from that to silly, dumb, giant, punchy fight. Or you can do, Gundam is hard sci fi for a lot of the Universal Century, where it's telling a war story and generally depressing. And then you've got Gundam Wing, which was Bishonen as fuck, and
It was also
still
still
one of
kind of
my favorite
depressing.
ones. Oh yeah, heavily. Especially when you watch the movie and it show you how fucked the heads of the main characters are, and you're like, oh yeah, they're only like 15, and they each have kill
Yeah.
counts that are six figures. That's a
Yeah.
lot of weight to stick on the mind of somebody who. And then they also point out that the main character Hiro is so broken from the hypnotherapy. He literally, his name doesn't exist anymore. He goes by the name they gave him as a code name, but they never mention what his original name was. And the fact that he looks kind of like a blank slate is because he's broken. Like, they fucked his head up. He
Oh yeah.
doesn't function like a normal person anymore. The other pilots all are still people. He's kind of robot-y.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And that's why
Oh,
eventually I'm gonna have Gundam Wing as one of the things that we end up watching. And I figure if we do that, we're gonna go with Wing and Endless Waltz back to back.
yes. Yeah, because Endless Waltz is truly a continuation. And watch the movie version of Endless Waltz. They didn't cut a lot out, but they cut some stuff out, so it's just not worth watching the OVA version. You're just missing content.
Right.
So,
So let's go into my history here for a little bit. So I too also started out with Power Rangers, but also
hmm
on that Fox block of power, there was
hmm
also a little something known as Beast Wars. Now,
Yeah, I
tech
completely forgot about that.
technically I started off with the 80s Transformers because I originally
Really?
got toys for the 80s Transformers. Like my very first one was actually legit the Optimus Prime with the semi truck attachment.
Wow.
Yeah, it
That
was
is
pretty dope.
old school. I mean, this is the 90s, so technically no, but that's still,
Yeah.
that's OG.
Um, but my first love for actual robots was a toss between giant Megazord battles and
Mm,
Beast Wars. Beast Wars
mm,
probably being the bigger one because let's
mm.
face it, like as much as I love talking about Toku related stuff, I prefer more mecha oriented stuff. And if you like look at my library of like physical content or digital media, a lot of my stuff is robot oriented. I love the short circuit movies despite the blatant racism.
Yeah, the
I
80s.
love the Neil Blomkamp Chappie movie. I mean, even though it's the same thing as Short Circuit,
Well,
I love Chappie,
mm,
and I didn't we see that together?
we did. We saw that in theaters. I still think Chappie is a really good movie. I think Neil Blomkamp kind of tells the same story in several of his films, but also
Yeah.
he's doing it
Well,
on
not in Gran
purpose.
Turismo, but yeah.
You mean Gran Torino?
No, Gran Turismo.
Oh, he did Gran Turismo, the movie, the car movie
Yeah,
about a guy
yeah,
joining a race team.
yeah.
Okay, that's not a story about the racism in South Africa. That has nothing to do with that.
Right.
that,
Um.
that is, yeah, no, yeah.
So, and with Beast Wars, I was a huge fanatic when it came to all the different,
Hmm,
robots on there. Like, I got almost all the Maximal toys. I got, or not
hmm,
Max, yeah, Maximals. I got a lot of the
hmm.
Decepticon toys. Even when they went all Transmetal 2, like Transmetal to Transmetal 2, I even went and
I love
got the
Cheetor with the
Optimal
jet
Optimus.
engines.
Dude, Cheetor with the jet engine was better than
So
his
fucking
Transmetal 2
cool.
form. Like, his Transmetal 2 form was just fucked up looking. That's all it was.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
Transmetal 2, I think, was supposed to be kind of weird and mutatey.
Yeah, but like then you got Dinobot, who was a Transmetal too. Technically, he was just a recreation, but he looked so much cooler as Transmetal too. And don't
Yeah.
get me started on the fact that Dinobot is probably one of the best characters ever written for a kids show, and then they managed to almost top it with Starscream in Transformers Armada.
So here's the thing, though. Both of those characters come from what I consider, now that I'm older, an anime archetype of the bad guy with so much. It's a samurai trope. The bad guy with so much honor, he eventually flips off his old bosses and just goes and works for the good guys, or at least helps them out a bunch because he respects one or more of the warriors on the good side,
Mm-hmm.
and he follows essentially his own code as a Ronin, I would just call it that. And that's a trope in both cinema and anime because there's a character I really liked in Ronin Warriors where he's the guy who essentially leads to the shonen power upgrade for the main character. He is insanely powerful, super strong, working for the bad guys, but he winds up respecting the main character and essentially grants him, after losing in a battle, grants him the armor that he had and then an upgrade even for his frickin' tiger, where that tiger gets reskinned and armored to be able to carry the special swords that the main character now has. And that was my favorite. That character has just stuck with me forever. I haven't even rewatched that show in decades.
That is also something that's on my list as well.
Solid show, but
um,
that's an archetype, and that's what Starscream fits into, and Dinobot. They're very
Absolutely.
specific. And they only ever did that once with Starscream because Armada is the most anime of all of the shows that came out in America. They go harder in Japan. There's a couple Japanese only shows that are really, really anime, but
Speaking of specific homonyms, Pacific Rim.
great movie. Both of them for different reasons, but
Yes.
so
As much as
great.
people like to distance themselves from the second movie, I want to let people know, and I've already let the director know multiple times on Twitter, that I absolutely love the second movie. I think the second movie, even though it has its issues, it is a fantastic movie, and I will maintain that
It's
opinion.
it's wonderful. I need to watch the Netflix show. We haven't gotten around to
Dude,
that
you
yet.
still haven't watched it? It's
No,
completed.
I know. I know.
Oh
Katie
man,
and
it
I need
is
to watch that one because fucking Pacific Rim is just good. I
it is
have
so
genuinely
good.
been in a bad mood or like not feeling great and then put on the first Pacific Rim because it's just good.
Dude, on my birthday, which is coming up soon, I'm going to be watching Pacific Rim for my birthday. It's my birthday tradition.
A solid tradition.
Hell yeah. So obviously I've got Beast Wars, I've got Transformers, I've
Hmm.
got Power Rangers. Don't forget we've also had Wham Bam, it's a Dino Jam. It's the
Oh,
dinosaurs.
I have rewatched, listened to that show multiple times in the last like 5 to 6 years. That is a
Really?
that is a campy as fuck show, and for some
Yes, it
reason my
is.
brain's like, we can do something else while listening to this. So I
That's
just
like
do other
Saban for
stuff while listening
kids.
to it. Yeah, that
You know who
is
actually did that though? It was
who did it?
Sunrise.
That was the American version legit Sunrise?
It was Sunrise.
Because so much of that American one is so very. I think the term everyone has now is dubism. That
Oh,
entire show
absolutely.
is
Which
so
is
dubism.
what we're gonna get into later on here, but
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna have to because we're gonna have to. It's not a choice.
Yeah, I wrote down a lot of different things about that, but it's such a joy. Speaking of which, Medabots. Medabots is one of those shows that I got really into, but then I was also a kid who had a lot of familial issues where I would constantly get grounded, so I never got the chance to finish it out. So this is one of the things that I plan on doing now. So Medabots. You got
Hmm.
Digimon. Technically, that's more of a creature thing, but they do evolve into Mecha at some point. So
Well,
there
the
you
thing
go on
with
that.
Digimon is because it's digital, they've always never. So people like to compare Digimon and Pokemon,
Hmm.
and it is accurate to say apple and orange because an apple and an orange are both fruits and very, very different. Digimon is not Pokemon, and Pokemon is not They do very different things. Digimon, I think, actually manages to reach a lot higher, even before the recent movies. The ideas that it expresses just in its world building are much deeper than Pokemon, which is essentially naturalism but aimed at 10-year-olds.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And Digimon,
Um,
because it's digital, tons of robots. Holy crap.
but that also reminds me, along with Power Rangers, at the exact same time, there was another show that came out, which is also Toku related, but I'm going to
Hmm.
get into this specifically for certain things here. Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad.
I have one to
Um,
bring up after we talk about this one too, that I forgot about. I always forget about it, but I loved the show as a kid.
but Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, also known as Gridman or Hyper Agent Gridman in Japan.
Hmm.
Um, it was Matthew Lawrence's starring role, his starring role, before he went on to other things like Blossom and what was it? That what's that show that they ended up? Boy Meets World. So
Hmm.
he plays a Ultraman like character, but in the digital universe known as Gridman, or in this case, in the American version, he was known as Servo.
Hmm.
Servo ended up getting a bunch of different friends who had come in to be like support roles, and whenever they did, they were giant mecha pieces that broke apart to serve as armor and weapons. Not only that, he ended up getting a giant dragon that also was like a giant, almost like a giant spaceship or anything like that, where it was like part dragon, part spaceship, and then once it transformed and like it turned into a giant cannon that Servo was able to like load himself out throughout with his accessories and then load up on his shoulder the dragon cannon. It was one of the most badass things that you would ever see. It was really really cool. I don't know where they are anymore, but I had all those toys back then, and it was one of the ones that I used to play with all the time.
Hmm.
But that leads into the fact that now I have seen a lot more mecha stuff these days. I have watched Mobile Suit Gundam. It started off with Gundam Wing because obviously with Toonami, that was the very
Yep.
first thing that we ended up getting.
They didn't even
And
bring over anything else. They started with Wing cold, just cold.
yep, and then
It's just it's a
they
weird
did the
entry.
dual version where it was like the regular version and then the uncut version where you get to see blood and you get to hear him
Midnight
say
Run.
"damn."
Midnight Run.
After that, that's when they started showing regular Gundam, or not regular, Mobile Suit Gundam.
Hmm.
And by then, I was already fully invested. I was able to
Oh,
go ahead and get like a whole
100%.
bunch of Gundam games. Like my very first one was Journey to Jaburo. Oh my god, I had so much fun playing Journey to Jaburo. That game, I
It's hard
think
as
I
fuck.
unlocked. Oh, it's super fucking hard.
It's so
Oh my
stupid.
god.
I
But
mean,
I
it's not as
unlocked
bad as Bionic
every
Front, but
single fucking thing in that game. I even got the hardest suit to get because I worked my ass off to get that when I was a little kid. It was
hmm
so fucking difficult, but oh my god, it was. I'm sure if I were to play it now, I'd be incredibly frustrated.
hmm
But then start branching out, checking out all these other different things. I've watched what's that one with Johnny Young Bosch in it? Code Geass. Code Geass is great. It's basically Shakespeare with Mecha.
essentially, yeah. Essentially, it's Shakespeare with mecha, and everything is very pretty and very swooshy.
Oh
Robots are
yeah,
freaking cool, though.
also made by Sunrise.
Yep,
Um,
they kind of have that down. They know what they're doing.
I've gotten more into like the cyberpunk stuff as well. Like there's Ghost in the Shell, which is your typical one. But then you also have like Cyborg 009.
Mm.
My one of my other favorite ones is Bubblegum Crisis. The
Hmm.
original Bubblegum Crisis is a little harder to watch, but Bubblegum Crisis 2099, woo wee, woo wee,
Hmm.
Rick. Yeah, it's so good. But the original one has this really cool music video. I think it's called tornado or something like that. I'll have to look it up and I'll put like a little link to it or something. But yeah, it's really cool. I fully recommend it, especially if you want something where it's like pseudo Power Rangers but all girl power, but it's very mecha based, and it's
Hmm.
basically girls killing androids.
Nice.
Oh, and then not to mention
Salty Ray.
Matrix, the Matrix animation or Animatrix, where that one's all about the robot riots. So yeah,
Hmm.
um,
Animatrix is solid. I would also recommend that the Cyberpunk 2077 anime is
ooh, I haven't watched that yet.
phenomenal. It is phenomenal. It is a tragedy, just forewarning if anybody wants to watch it, that it's a tragic story and it is beautiful.
I was gonna wait until I started the game on that one. That way I could
Hmm.
do one leading into the other. Oh, but the thing that I think started me off with everything was an old, I think it's late 80s, early 90s. It's called Robot Jocks, and it's basically Proto Pacific Rim.
Ah, real Frodo.
Oh yeah, it's almost like clay animation, but it's like it's not, but it looks like it.
It's you gotta be in some. It's gonna be a rough watch for some people because it is very old, very 80s.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's when you talk about Mecha, it's gonna come up. They're gonna be like, "What were the Americans doing?" Well, they had robot jocks.
Hey, it worked for the time because it was basically, essentially Americans versus commies.
It's essentially Mech Warrior, but nowhere near as in depth as BattleTech was, and not. I mean, there also weren't as many robots, but also Mech Warrior and BattleTech are super cool to get into
Mm-hmm.
more hard. That's more hard sci-fi where giant robots truly are replacements for tanks, and then it's in the future, and there's mega corporations and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Very Armored Core.
So, as for the thing that probably stands out for me, the one that I gravitate to the most, honestly, it's probably just Pacific Rim. It's
Hmm.
like I said, it's my yearly tradition. It's the one that I go grab. It's the one that I like the most. It's the one where I know every part coming up, and it's just I've seen it multiple times, and I just grin every time I watch it.
Soundtrack for that movie is solid. One of my favorite moments in the entire thing is the "Are you kidding me?" as the soundtrack pumps up and in a neon lit hallway, they just baseball bat a giant monster with a freaking
With a
container
tanker.
ship. That's
Yep.
my brain the whole time is like, that is not how that works. And we don't
Nope.
care
But
because
who
that is
cares?
badass. That
Right?
looks so fucking cool. I don't care. That's
Exactly.
video game logic applied the right way.
Exactly. Why do you need realism when it comes to that?
Exactly. What the hell you need
So let
realism for?
now that you've got our history here, if we ever happen to have any other guests on the show, we'll end up diving into their mecha history as well and checking in to see what their favorite thing is when it comes to their mecha mentality. But I know you're all here for the meat and potatoes of what's supposed to be for this particular episode.
Yeah, 30
Well,
minutes
let's
in.
go ahead and try out talking about Medabots. So, Will, or yeah, let's just do Will. I'm not gonna say anything else. Will, when it comes to Medabots, what is your initial thought?
So I never watched the entire show when it originally aired because back then TV was a thing that you could somehow miss. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't exist anymore. So you're all good. But I did not watch the entirety of the original run, but I really thought it was super cool when it
Do
came
you
out.
remember the Fox Kids website that ran in conjunction with this, where it was basically allowing you to play your own Metabots arena type thing? It was all 3D, but it ran really crappily,
No,
and
but
it
I am
allowed you to
sad I missed
custom.
this.
It allowed you to customize parts that you were able to collect through like grinding through different metal missions, and you're able to go ahead and like fight other people online after they did a couple
Sounds
updates. But
amazing.
it
Why
didn't
did I
last
miss
very
this?
long. It did not last long.
I mean, if we're gonna play that game, do you remember when Cartoon Network used to, for some reason, pay people to make online Flash video games essentially for their shows?
Yep,
Like the Gundam chess game that had a like rock
I
paper
remember
scissors
that.
system.
Yeah,
Kids
they did
Next
the same thing
Door,
when like
all of
Toonami
those
got
shows
had
had
their
some
own
silly
like
little
little
online
alien
game that went along with
infestation.
it. Oh, that one was freaking cool because it was a tie-in to what was happening. But
Uh,
and yes, I did
Hang
play
on, what's going on
as it
here?
happened. I was sad that Tom went away. What's up?
I don't know if you're okay. I think the internet's been cutting out. I don't know what's been going on there. If anything, I can cut that out later.
So as long as
You
you're
still with me?
recording, it should be fine. I'm still here with you. Occasionally you will like kind of get garbled, but it'll
Yeah,
come
same for
back a
you.
second later. Yeah.
No worries. I
So
can always edit that out.
yeah, and honestly, Audacity or whatever recording tool should be keeping a much better record of the sound we are both making,
Yep.
rather than the actual connection between us. Like, this isn't a recording of a Skype call. This is individually recording and then slapping the two things together.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's go ahead and try to dive
Hmm.
into the first episode here. So I've got a few notes that I wrote down for everything. Um,
Hmm.
First off, awesome intro. No matter what, that intro is sick. It
Early
is
for
such a
America,
sick intro.
so good.
Oh,
That's just
absolutely,
the
dude.
the guy just hammering away on the bass guitar, and oh, that's a solid opening right there.
Exactly. Yeah.
It sounds really good.
And and the very first character that we're introduced to is an anonymous tuxedo mask type character. It's like, all right, I see exactly what they're going for here, but come on, really?
Until two
uh,
minutes later, where you're like, oh, okay, we're not
yeah.
taking this
Um,
seriously. Solid.
no, they definitely did not. And then like right away, like right after that, that's when you realize that it's capitalizing on the Digimon and Pokemon market where
Hmm?
it decides to do. Oh, we have a new Medabot here. What are its strengths? What are its
Yep.
weaknesses? What's its special move?
Who's
It's
that
like,
Pokemon? And it's so stupid.
oh yeah,
Special
but
ability
just
is
like
like hand.
it. Oh my god, dude! Like one of them was like, it looks very mean. I'm
Oh,
like, are you
that was
kidding?
funny, and that was actually minor foreshadowing for 30 seconds later, because which isn't even a thing I would have understood at the time. The entire thing is based off of the idea of Bancho and like manly characters that like are super scary looking, but it's actually
Mm,
all a facade. They're just like a chicken. They're Starscream.
yep.
They might be big, scary, and a giant robot, but they're also, spineless.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then Mr. Referee, dude, he is legit the best character in the entire thing.
I have no idea what he's written like in Japanese, but I love
I
him in
want to know.
English.
I want
I
to find
do.
out. I will.
I want to know so badly because now that I know so much more about anime and how all of this works, I really want to know what this show is in Japanese and how different. Because it's still a lot of it's visual gags and stuff, so all that's going to be there. But like, how
Right, but
different is
how
this
is the
story?
right? Like, how are the lines going to be different? Because everything that you see on there is just going to be like, wow, that was such a weird turn. Oh God, it just got weirder. And then he's suddenly there.
And then
Today's Medabots referee match.
Mr. Referee. Also, they do stick to their guns. It's only official when he officiates it. Because in episode 3, which I know is jumping ahead, there's two matches, one right after the other. The first one is not officiated by him because it's just a private disagreement between two people. And
Mm-hmm.
then the second match is officiated by him. And because the second one is officiated and declared a submission match, that one actually involves somebody losing a part. Whereas the first match
Right.
was for a separate bet that the two people had agreed to before the match commenced.
Right, exactly. But the fact that he just randomly shows up, like,
Oh,
how are
I
you
love it.
there? Why are you spying on children?
Dude, that's his job. He works for the World Meta Fighter Federation, WMF?
I,
I think it's
I
WMF.
guess, I guess.
Oh, he says
All the
put the name of
medals,
it.
all the medals look like Pogs, like
They
every
do.
single one.
They look like
Oh wait,
hexagonal metal pogs.
let's describe the Medabots real quick. So Medabots, basically, what they are, they're robot skeletons that you can
Mhm.
actually customize to be your liking. Some of them have different themes. The one that the main character uses, he has one where it's a beetle type,
The armor
and
specify.
right, beetle type armor, and he ended up finding this random metal in the river that is a special. Was it the color that was different?
No, a lot of the metals are that color. Also, I'm going to be totally honest. I think over the time that the show exists, animation consistency, as because this show is also hand drawn, the whole thing. This season, this major arc that we're watching at least.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are animation errors. I don't know if in the world of Medabots, because I have not played because it died so hard in America. I have not like dug hard enough into the lore. I don't know if there's different like metal types and they are different colors and made of like a different metal. So like
Hmm.
gold is really good, platinum is better, silver is meh, but a lot of them seem to be made out of that shiny gold looking stuff. And the metal
Right.
contains everything. It has like the full AI because they basically have artificial intelligence for the
Yeah,
robot.
so I'm looking at the thing here where it says Icky ends up finding a metal.
Hmm.
Let's see, rare metals were kept secret by Medabot Corporation, as very little is known about them.
Yep,
A
which ties
Medabot with a
in
rare
later
metal would be
on.
able to call upon an attack called the Metaforce.
You don't remember that part?
Nope.
Okay, well that I'm going to be honest, I remember a lot more about the show, but I will let you experience the joy of discovery. I'm not going to
All
talk about
right.
that. Let's just leave that word alone. Not read too much more on the wiki, and go ahead forward. The point is,
Yeah, sure.
his medal is special. It was the one that knockoff Tuxedo Mask was stealing, and then he butterfingered into the river. That part's funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
Also, the bad guys in this particular episode were great. I like how with each episode we get different types of bad guys.
there is
With
a
this,
consistent one though.
oh, you mean the girl?
No, there is a consistent gang that winds up as an antagonist. I remember what they're called, but
Later on, or is it? Are you talking about the punk rock
oh
ones that I
no,
was going to bring up?
no. In episode one, the people that he stole the metal, that dude stole the metal from, the ones in those rubber suits, they're
Oh,
working.
okay.
That gang is called the Rubber Robo Gang. You'll hear them mentioned in a few episodes,
So
and
Team
then
Rocket.
yeah, basically Team Rocket, but like really silly. They wear
Okay.
like full rubber outfits, and the only thing that is exposed is their face. And then they all have like a big, goofy 1960s sci-fi metal antenna on their head. Um,
Hmm.
Different characters will have like a different shape and stuff, like Teletubbies.
Right.
But they're the bad guys, and well, they're one of the big gangs, and they wind up, I think, getting employed by like the corporation to strong arm people and like steal stuff and all that.
Okay,
But
that makes more
they
sense.
they are antagonists. You will get a certain, I think, trio who will show up consistently, and then you'll have a few other higher ranking members who will show up more often, and you'll get to know them.
I'm
Silly
vaguely starting to
every
remember
time.
this now from when I originally watched that.
Oh,
Okay.
they are silly every time. It's wonderful.
So to do a brief summary of this first episode, Tuxedo Mask, or not Tuxedo Mask, ends up stealing a bunch
There
of
you go.
metals from the bad guys, and then as he does so, he ends up dropping the rare metal, the
Hmm.
Metabee metal, in the river, and he doesn't know about it until Icky, the main character, ends up finding it, and then keeps it for himself.
He thinks it's lost until Icky pops this thing out of nowhere, and he's like, "Hey, where'd you get that? You don't have any money." Legit, the thought
Like,
process of that guy.
right, you broke little
Yeah,
shit.
he looks at me like,
Anyways,
"Dude, you're poor. Where'd you get that?"
yeah. Um, and Icky always wanted a Metabot. Like he thinks
Hmm.
that he's gonna be a Metabot master, just like Ash Ketchum.
Yep. Yeah.
Except he just had he ain't got no money. He
Oh
ain't got
no,
no
he's
bot.
he's a lot like Ash. They're both kind of dumb. They got a
Oh
lot of
my
heart.
God, he's dumb.
They got a lot of
He's
heart,
so
but
dumb.
they're a
Oh
little dumb.
God. This is why it's for kids, or it
Uh-huh.
feels like it. And so then on top of that, you've got like a rogue gang of glam punk rockers who are
Hmm.
going around challenging people for different Metabot parts. Now, mind you, this was the thing that really bugged me, but then you're
Hmm.
kind of just forced to go with it.
Uh-huh.
The first person that you see that gets attacked by these glam punk rockers
Hmm.
is part of this school gang. And what's he carrying? He's carrying a brand new part called the Bombarder.
Yep.
What does the Bombarder do?
It's a rocket launcher.
There you go.
It's a missile
They
pod.
just sell rocket. They just sell rocket
Oh no.
launchers
I
to
love
kids.
I love that this show is so anime in its logic. It's so there's a much newer show that feels very much in the same vein called Ball Sinky. It's essentially Cardboard Battler. It came over to America as, oh, what did they rename it? Damn, I have the game too. They renamed it when it came here, and I think it also didn't do so hot, but continued in Japan because it's how these things go.
Hmm.
But the plot for that one is very similar. The robots are much smaller, but apparently they don't have like, because in Dumbbell Senki they control the robot and it's like the size of an action figure, but
Hmm.
the robots hit each other and that's how they win and lose fights. But the robots have like guns and stuff. Now in the real world, because it's all robot versus robot and the kids can see like first person what the robot sees, you literally could just program whatever special attack, and then it could just be it points its arm, and then the attack goes off, and it's all just like AR, augmented reality, like animations. That's all they would have to do. No, they equip actual weapons. The main character in episode one literally is hiding behind his couch as three of the characters who broke into his home with their tiny robots because they can get in through vents because they're 4 inches tall broke in and
The
started
hell?
shooting at him, the tiny robots, and they're leaving bullet holes in his wall and his furniture, and he's ducked behind his couch trying not to die. And he winds up having to crack open the briefcase that they are going after, and that's when he first turns on the little robot, and then he fights them off, and there you go, the rest of the show. It's just as
All right, yeah.
ridiculous as
Find that name for
Medabots.
me. That way I can definitely get pictures for this later.
Well, I'll get it
Because
for
that's
you.
wild.
But it's
Yeah,
the
that
same
is
thing with
wild.
this. It's giving children munitions, and you're like, how would anyone be okay with this?
Right?
They have
So
missiles, flamethrowers, rockets.
going back to that. So the kid who's in the gang, he's like trying to get his boss to help him because he wants his part back. He's like, first they rocked me and then they rolled me.
Oh, the dumb writing in the show. It's so
It
good.
was so dumb, but I was like, you know what? That was a perfect
Oh.
line. And then as I noticed when they were out there like showing off their guitar riffs and shit,
Hmm.
I noticed that there was no actual electric guitar speaker. Like there was nothing
There's
there.
no
They were
amp,
just nothing.
air
I
guitar.
was like, okay,
Okay, okay, hold on. I will counter in favor of the show's universe in one way, which is that not just the holy crap, you've advanced robotics and electronics to the point where it's a children's toy that basically is fully AI and you're all fine with it. Like to have that so cheap and simple that a Gundam model kit is essentially what these things turned into is
yeah,
crazy. Icky, his notebook for school that he gets in like episode 3 is literally just essentially a Kindle paper where it opens up and it looks like two sheets of paper and then you would just like write on it. That's his notebook for
oh, that's
school.
right, yeah,
So
I
their
completely
world
forgot about that.
their world is weird because it's like 80s and 90s level of like how everything looks, but then the technology is like super advanced and past anything we have now. Because like the watches that
Hmm.
they have are basically just the chunkiest Casio you've ever seen. And then because it has to facilitate the metal, and then they literally hit a button and teleport a robot's body from the wherever it is to where they are. And
Okay,
think
mind you,
I think
when
they
that
say the
happens,
range.
it looks like the Terminator.
Yeah, no, it. They also do say at one point. I think I don't remember if they do, but I'm pretty sure there's a plot point where in one of the episodes they talk about how far they can actually teleport the body because when they have the metal and it's essentially registered to a they've registered like a body, they can teleport that
Well,
body.
he has to be able to have the metal in his watch.
Yes,
He
but I
can't
mean
actually have it on the Medabot itself.
no, he needs the metal to call the body over. But I mean, like, there's a
Right.
physical limit to how far, like, is it like 100 miles, 200 miles? I think they give a limit to the distance to how far they can be from the body before they can call it over. But it is
I'll
still
have to look it up.
crazy. It's still crazy that, like, it's a safe I mean, teleportation is an entire horror movie trope for science fiction. So the idea that
Yeah.
5-year-olds are handed teleporters and it's fine because they're not going to accidentally kill themselves or their friends is insane. It just is.
But that also brings up the idea of how, with the way that everything is set up for this particular episode, how he ends up finally bringing Metabee over,
Hmm.
and then Metabee doesn't work.
I have a
So,
theory about that personally, but that's a headcanon thing.
we can go over that later.
Hmm.
But in this particular episode, he calls Metabee a hunk of junk because he's not working, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden he finally does get up. He looks and walks like shit, and then he
Hmm.
finally does actions, like, oh, press A to attack, that sort
Hmm.
of thing.
Yep.
And he finally takes on the glam rockers, and all said and done, I was like, all right, cool, way to go. All right, I win. Bye, everybody. You called me a piece of shit. Well, he didn't say that, but you know what I mean. And then Metabee turns against him. He's like, well, you know what? I'm no junk. You're a junk. And then he goes against his master and decides to be a little dipshit. So
We get
Metabee is
the
alive.
we get the basically the entire show, which is Metabee and Icky are people, and each one of them is so similar to the other and also just so flawed and arrogant and dumb that they will just
What does
constantly
Metabee
grate
remind you of as
on
a
one another.
personality type?
Hmm?
What does he remind you of as a personality type?
I'm gonna be totally honest. There's this other anime that I really, really like that got. So I never watched the original. I didn't even know it existed, but it got remade, and it's called. Oh wow, I'm losing half of the title, but it's and Toriko. Tor, oh jeez, it's a shonen
It's all
anime
right. You
about a
lose your
guy.
brain.
It's a shonen anime about a guy fighting, demons and stuff, and it's really, really good. I highly recommend it. But the dynamic between the two main characters in that is a lot like Icky and Metabee, where they constantly will butt heads, and they both the main character in that's got a little more going on, but the butting heads and the constant battering against one another reminds me of that.
Yep, I was thinking along the lines of the fact that he was more like a one of those delinquent kids that you would see in a high school in a
Yeah,
Japanese setting.
yeah,
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of that.
yeah. No, that
But that
that
was the
makes sense.
first episode. It was pretty good for a starter. I wouldn't say it's terrible. It was actually really good. Now let's go on to the second one. Do you remember what the second one was about, other than the fact that the shop clerk is possibly not Tuxedo Mask?
Well, that's a constant running joke. I'm pretty sure later on they do a gag where he gets really, like, he falls really far, and then as in his not tuxedo mask outfit, and then the next day when they show him at the shop, he's like walking around with his hand on his back going, "Oh, everything hurts. Everything hurts." And then like
Ah,
somebody
there you
will ask
go.
him and be like, "What's up? You okay?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. Just fell in the back moving boxes." And you're
I remember
like,
that.
yeah, yeah, that's not why.
So, can you tell me what the second one's about? Do you remember?
Um, First and the third stick more in my head. Let me see if I can remember which
Right, the
one.
second one almost felt like filler a little bit.
Which is weird because it technically was.
Right. So the second one, it starts off with Icky, waking up at home and finding out that Metabee is, being very gracious to his family, but not to him.
Right, right. Okay, yeah. Episode two really does feel like filler. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he ends up going to school and you find out that you can't have Medabots at school.
Hmm.
Then you get some like really weird stuff here where like first off, you find out that the principal, he has a very 50s movie voice, like, hello children,
Hmm.
like shit like that. I don't know why I wrote this, but for some reason I wrote down I'm allergic to cheese. Oh, it's
Because
because that's what one of the kids said. Right. He
yeah.
said some sort of joke about something involving dairy or something like that, and one of the gang member kids said, "I'm allergic to cheese." It was just so out there. I'm like, okay. And then like the first new Metabot that we see is one that they call the tortoise. Did that thing look like a tortoise to you at all?
Tortoise? What?
Yeah, it's the one that
Oh,
the
the
chunkier
yeah, the guy from
gang
the
member has.
Screws uses. So So that's one where the legs type is essentially four legs, but I think they hover. They allow it to like slightly hover. If you look just at
Yeah,
the legs look like the body of a tortoise, and then if you look at the rest of its body, it looks
it looked like a
kind.
cat.
No, Pepper Cat looks like a cat,
Whatever.
but no, it looks kind of like a tortoise in if you like looked at a chunky generic mecha design and then somebody said make it look more like a turtle. That's
Hmm.
essentially it's like, shifted 20% of the way over on the slider and you're like, it looks a little bit more like a tortoise. I can see how it would, but it doesn't lean so hard into the animal like Metabee does. We also forgot to mention one of the big things for Metabee, which you also forgot to mention one of the bigger other recurring characters in the show, sir. The chicken
Which one?
salesman.
Oh, the chicken peddler. Yeah.
That guy is in like every episode of the show.
He's there to give words of wisdom to try and sell chickens,
His
but it turns out
selling
it's actually just words of wisdom that everything connects to.
he essentially tries to sell baby chicks, and his method for selling them is to tap into the soul of the universe and then talk to you like a great deity of the ages. And that's his selling technique. And then he tries at the very end to go, you should really buy a chicken because they're a lot like that.
Yeah.
And then they run away and don't buy it.
Yeah, because they're already gone at
I feel
that
kind of
point.
bad. I think he's poor.
But that actually brings up the thing at the very end of the episode. At the very end of the episode, they actually have it where not tuxedo mask ends up having to take a chicken,
He broke one of
and
the
it like
eggs.
it's nesting in
Yep.
his head, and it reminded me of Saz from Final
There's
Fantasy
there's the 13
13.
reference. We didn't even make it one episode until you got into Final Fantasy. Impressive.
But yeah, it. So the whole episode for this one, it's basically about his rivalry with the Screws, and he was originally going to be getting a way to be like vice class president.
Yeah.
And the nerds in this one are the typical anime nerds that were introduced in Sailor Moon, where they have the screw
Yep.
spiral
The
glasses.
traditional anime, that's a smart kid who can't see well. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe that. So been doing it's such a weird thing. So the way that it feels like filler is that it essentially amounted to nothing. The only good thing was that it was basically just a bunch of really good
Mhm.
gags. Like the first one um was with the principal. How the principal is like, "Oh, you challenged me to a row battle, huh?" And the brings out his like samurai looking thing, and it's like, "Oh shit, he means business."
Honestly, they
So
they do
yeah,
technically foreshadow it. That's kind of his for the whole show. The principal is just older, lonely, and he wants to row battle, but he never gets an opportunity to.
yeah. Then you're also introduced to the coach who hates row battles or
He
hates
does
Medabots
because
in
he looks at
general.
them like video
But
games.
that actually leads into the next episode. But the last thing on this particular episode, this bothered me. But again, it also goes with what you were talking about earlier. The fact that property
Oh
damage
yeah,
is
no,
okay, apparently.
it's a gag
Um,
anime, so it doesn't actually happen. And just like how no one actually dies, no one actually like permanently gets maimed.
yeah, but those are live rounds,
Yeah,
as you
which, well,
mentioned.
actually, when you're talking about that too, the grounding, which they almost never do anywhere. Anybody who's ever been around a actual firearm that has discharged, they are insanely loud.
Hmm.
You fire a gun once in a low caliber and it'll leave your ear ringing a little. You fire a machine gun and you're basically going deaf, especially if you're doing it in an enclosed space and stuff like that. Like you wouldn't be able to hear anything in reality. You would just be deaf. It's
Oh yeah,
there's multiple theories about shows where in universe they're like, well, they never address it, or they do once or twice and then they pretend like it's not there. But if you look at the arc of the show, it's kind of like the characters are all going deaf, and it's like, yeah, they probably are. None of them were hearing in any way, so they're probably all deaf at this point.
no wonder why they're
Yeah,
always
that
shouting at
too.
each other. Um, so at the very end, he ends up fighting the leader of the gang.
Hmm.
He wins in a really really pretty easy, well, not easy battle, but he after doing the property damage, that was fine. Then their boss
Mm,
shows
the
up,
big
and his
cheese.
specialty was strong appearance.
They the running joke. The screws
Yeah.
who are the gang, the trio. This and they're led by a girl who has the raspiest voice I've ever heard come out of a 6-year-old or 7 or whatever age.
Hey, Dad, but
Yeah,
not but a
no,
little bit
I
lower.
was always thought it was weird. My brain, and when I was a kid, I didn't realize that was a girl until they explicitly said it because never sounded like a
Right?
girl to me. And as an adult, that is a really raspy voice for like a 9-year-old because they're supposed to be in like elementary or middle. They're supposed to be really young in this show. Not like anime young, where like
Yeah.
Bleach and they all look like adults. No, they look like kids and they're supposed to be like 9, 10 years old, I think at the most.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Probably
Yeah,
11
so
maybe.
like they're not in high school,
But
but they are in like middle school.
yeah, but at the very end of this episode, the big cheese comes out, and he's like, "I challenge you to a row battle." And what happens? Metabee just does like one little pea shot, and it just
He just taps
dies.
him, and then the robot falls over, and the big cheese is like, "Oh no, I don't feel so good." Ugh, and he starts coughing and clearing his throat, and he's like, "I think I got to get home. I don't feel so good." He just walks away into the
Yep.
sunset. Oh, also, as a
Yeah.
tiny note that I really like, the meta watches for a lot of the characters are generic. They're just like a solid color and that's it. But for like the bad guys, they'll do unique ones. The Big Cheese has a spiked heavy metal leather wristlet that his meta watch is mounted to.
Ah, I
And
didn't notice
in
that. That's
episode
actually pretty
three,
cool.
that guy, his meta watch, because he's supposed to basically be like Yakuza, that dude's meta watch is essentially all gold, like a gold watch, because it's in character. So it's just really cool that they would bother to even like go that hard with it. Enjoy it.
So, speaking of number three, let's get
Mm.
into that one real quick. So, I think this one was my favorite out of this
Yeah,
batch so
actually,
far.
like if you're just these three episodes, three really is like the show hitting its stride in a lot of ways. It's nice.
Yeah, because this one, you've got a lot of character growth. You've got a lot of different
Hmm.
side characters who actually, have a point to actually being there. They're not there just for gags. They're actually there for, the character growth of everybody. Like, everybody has their own
Hmm.
backstory as to what they're doing. And granted, it was done as a very cheesy, oh, you're doing it to
Okay, but
protect
that
the
was
little
funny
kids,
because
but,
watching
like,
them cry manly tears was hilarious.
okay, that was really funny. That was really funny. So this particular episode, this one, it's about how
Of
Icky
course.
is an idiot,
Yeah.
per usual, and as doing so, being an idiot, he ends up getting on his coach, who's named Coach
Solid
Mountain.
name.
He gets up on his bad side, and he's constantly having to work out and do like all these different things with the rival gang because he keeps on being an idiot and accidentally doing bad, dumb
Hmm.
things to the
And breaking
coach.
school policy.
Um,
And the
and
punishment is like go run laps.
yes, run
Hmm.
laps, do push-ups, do
Hmm.
all these other different things. And the whole thing is, remember, Coach Mountain, he does
Hmm.
not like Medabots. But then people end up like investigating some things, and you find out, oh, he's got some shady deals going on. And my initial note here is like, huh, that's weird. He must be really into drugs, or he has some shady robot sex
I don't
dealings. But
think this show's
anyways,
going to go there, Sean. You're going to be
um,
very disappointed if you hold that one.
no, it did not. But it did not. But you never know. Kids, anime,
Ay,
censorship, whatever.
wrong
Uh,
channel, my friend.
so well, it was
Yeah,
Fox.
this is an Adult Swim. We're not going to get
Anyways,
into the secret underground. Well, actually, I say that. All right, let's just
yeah,
let's
yeah,
see where this
exactly,
goes.
exactly. So then you've everybody's like trying to follow Coach Mountain as he does these shady dealings, and he's like blowing up buildings or he's blowing down the side of buildings with a Medabot. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and it turns out that he's actually trying to get money so he could buy this plot of land. That way he can build a playground for these little kids. And like, oh, that's cool. And then you find out the reason why he's doing that is because the other people trying to get that plot of land is Yakuza, which I thought was very funny for me because after beating Yakuza 0, there was legit an entire plot line about that game, about this one little plot of land that everybody
Wow.
wanted. And I'm like, this must be something that happens a
Well,
lot.
okay. Here's the thing. The show, like a lot of things, is media from Japan. Japan is an island nation. They have limited land, and it is even more limited in an urban space because there's just not as much. Think New York, LA, that sort of thing.
And
They
Yakuza are
exist
prevalent.
a lot. They still around. There are people who UFC fighters and stuff get talked to by them, and they do legitimate and otherwise dealings. They are yakuza. They have a lot of power and a lot of money, and
Mm,
those two guys or three guys are very heavily coded to be like the local thugs, essentially.
yeah. So, a couple things here that I want to go into before we get into the ending
Hmm.
part of this. At the very beginning of the episode, when Metabee is like being introduced to Icky again, on school grounds and all the other wackiness, I noticed that he's missing a gun barrel on one of his
Oh,
arms.
that's actually
Did you
that's
notice
real.
that?
One of his arms has one gun barrel, the other one has two.
Is there a reason for that?
I think it's just design. In the I think in the video games and stuff, it's because they're one of them has like higher accuracy and I assume probably like muzzle velocity, and then the other one is like a machine gun. So essentially, he has a rifle and a machine gun for his weapons, and then on his head,
Oh, that's dope.
yeah, it that I don't they don't go into it in the show really because this is a gag anime. That's what it is. That's what it's made for, and it does it really well. And in a moment, I will bring up my favorite character in the show when she's my favorite character in the show, 100%.
Was it the hooker?
No, what is wrong with you?
Oh, because there was a hooker in
There
this episode.
was
In case you
there
didn't
was a
notice,
hooker. There
there
were
was a
several drunk like office workers,
Yep, lots of
dudes
drunk
with
people.
fucking ties around their foreheads and stuff who are just wasted and like trying to get kids to join them in karaoke.
And I'm like, I can't believe this actually aired on
Okay,
TV. They
so
got away with a
well, you
lot.
got to remember that they don't reference it in a way that would upset American censors, and in Japan, they're okay with pointing these things out. The original Pokemon games have a drunk man, and you're supposed to be 10. That didn't fly in America, so they changed it, but in Japan, they don't care. Drunk old man is just a normal
I didn't
thing.
know that.
Yeah, in Viridian City, the guy who blocks your path, when she says, "Oh, he's always my grandpa's always grumpy until he gets his," I think she says coffee in him in the English Pokemon. He's drunk.
Oh,
He's 100%
okay. That makes
coded as
sense.
drunk old man in the Japanese
That's
version.
kind of like saying how I need my
He's
juice.
literally
Like, what was it
hungover.
in Hey
Yeah,
Arnold? You're like, she's always
uh-huh. Yeah,
juicing.
it's he was legitimately like wasted or he had like a hangover and then she had to get him
Yeah,
like a bottle of sake so that he would feel better again. And then he tells you that like evens him out and that's when he tells you how to catch Pokemon. But that's just a thing in Japan is drunk old man. That's just normal and they put it in kids anime all the time. It's just a thing.
that makes
But
sense.
my favorite character is Erica. Well, I think it's pronounced
Oh, you
Arika.
mean his best friend?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like, and this is one of those things I really want to know how she is written in Japanese and how he is written in Japanese because I'm curious how much their characters changed because she feels really American in how they write her as like a kid journalist. Like she really, but a lot of like the way that they animate her feels incredibly in line with that character. So I'm curious if that was
Right.
adjusted or just that's her. She's just like that kid who's like super driven and wants to be a journalist and stuff, and that's what she does. But she's easily one of my
It's
favorite
possible.
characters in the show.
She's a really good character. Not to mention, she's also a really good counterpart to
Oh,
Vicky.
heavily. She does the thinking more than he does. Her Medabot Brass is essentially a maid, which I feel like they missed an opportunity.
She looks like a
She does
sailor,
look like
like
Sailor
a
Senshi,
sailor
that sort
senshi.
of thing, where she's got the bow on her
Yeah,
forehead and the bow, I think, on her back. If not, it's in her design.
on her
Yeah, on her
chest.
chest. She looks like like almost Sailor Moon kind of, but she acts like a maid or
Hmm.
like a caretaker for Erica. I'll call her, sorry, Arika, as they do in the dub. Arika, the she acts like a maid for her. She's always reminding her about like piano lessons. Oh, you have this studying today. You have tutoring, which also this is not a thing the show goes into at all. It's not that kind of show. It's very clear that her family is doing a lot better than Icky's. The reason that his
Okay, so I didn't mention this, but yes, you're
the
absolutely
fact that
right.
she
In the
has
last episode, oh my god,
the fact that she has
in the last episode,
like piano lessons at all and then like she literally says and so nonchalantly just ask your parents to buy you one and he's like they keep telling me I have to save my money but they're both so young he doesn't understand that his parents are saying save your allowance because they literally can't outright purchase it because they don't have enough money because they're not well off enough or they just don't want to.
okay, I don't think that only because did you take a good long look at his dad?
I mean they show him for like a solid four
He's
seconds
he's no, they did it for about a good maybe 15 seconds. He looked like a straight up otaku
mm.
that like he looked like the dad from FLCL. All right,
But the dad in Fully
so
Cooley was
I don't
kind of
want
a
to hear
deadbeat.
that. You
Yeah,
exactly. So I
that's
kind of get the feeling that he's
exactly.
still spending all of his money just because he
And even
can.
if it's not that he's an otaku, he's not taking care of his family.
Fully
Solid
coolly.
show,
Anyways,
but he's not taking care of his family. And whereas Erika's family, she already has a Medabot. They use the Medabot functionally to go out and remind her of things, help her with things, get her to do, get her places and take care of her, which is a functional thing they can do. But Brass also has guns on her arms, so she can
she does.
legitimately like defend her, and she
She kind of looks like a Mega Man character a little
100%.
bit.
There's a lot of Mega Man vibes in season one of Medabots. There's a lot of Mega Man vibes in how like chunky their limbs are and how like bulky they look, but in
Hmm.
that like cartoony way. So it's got those vibes pretty heavily.
Um,
I like her a lot though. I listen to this show because I do the whole play a show in the background and do other things, like a couple years ago. And I
Now,
loved Erica that time, and I still do. She's a great character.
now, a couple things that I want to mention about this final moment here, because this it set me off, but then it also made me laugh really hard at the
Oh
same
boy.
time. So the first thing was the enemy Medabot that we
Hmm.
got. You said that it was a
Well,
cat,
hold
right?
on. Which we're talking about episode three? Episode
Yeah.
three's enemy Medabot was an elephant
Oh,
with
it was
tank
an
treads.
elephant. It did not look like a fucking elephant to
So
me.
the head
No,
looks like
based
an
bots,
elephant, but then it's got
these animal bots do not look
well
like
so
animals.
they're like if you squint you could see what they were going for. It's like oh the head and it's got like a trunk and then like a an iron ball attached to a chain comes out. Yeah, I can see how that's an elephant. You can call it that. I don't know what the fuck's up with the weird arms with the faces on them. That's just weird.
I don't I
I
don't
did
fucking
that's
know.
if we're gonna define it, that's the
But
Dumbo thing with the weird like Dumbo gets wasted. That mega fan is based off of that. Somebody getting a little tipsy and then building the robot.
my two favorite lines from the end of this episode were when the kids were talking about when everybody was talking about the playground. The kids, the first thing they say, and I fucking died. Whenever we play outside, we get road rash.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then Coach Mountain says, "I will not rest till I see those kids swinging from those monkey bars."
Well, you could take that out of context. That's real dark.
Yeah, but it just made me laugh. And then the referee just shows up in a really random funny way.
Was it?
But then it was also cool at the very end that it was a Metapart
Yeah. Well,
match.
that's the one where at first it's Coach versus Gang Boys, and he's literally just trying to beat them so that the agreement is whoever wins the match is allowed to purchase the property, and the other person will essentially just stop bothering them and let them do it. So nothing happens.
Yep.
Then Icky shows up, and Icky it becomes an official road battle, while not just for that original thing. He's like, all right, I'll face you anyway. And it becomes a submission match, and Mr. Referee shows up, sanctions it, and then at the end, it tells you that he got I think one of the shield arms from Mega Fan.
I think so. Yeah, I'll have to take a look, but I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure you're right. But all in all, this one was definitely my favorite episode, just because of all the different things that you got on there. Plus, not to mention the really random street section with the hooker and the drunk people,
Anime,
and
man.
the really random lines at the very end, especially about the road rash, because that just made me that just
It's
I laughed
such a
so hard at
cross
that.
between
Um,
dubism and just anime.
yeah, yeah, but it's just so good. So I'm really looking forward to the next three
Yeah.
episodes.
I think that you're going to enjoy the trip through Medabots. I will also say that I have never done the entire show. The original run, original run, the first series, I'll call it, that like is a full arc and then finishes, and then we do a number two, is like 50 something episodes
And a
and a
number
number
three.
three. The first 50 something episodes are all hand drawn. They're all rooted in like the 90s anime. After that, it gets very toy-y. Like there's a gimmick introduced in episode one of the second arc, and then it goes from there. But the original show feels a lot like the first like series for Pokemon, the Indigo League, where it was very
Oh yeah.
clear that they weren't sure that they were going to get another series. They weren't sure that there was going to be more, and the writer just kind of wrote whatever they wanted. So Metabots comes off as this like fun, goofy gag anime just filled with a bunch of stuff that the people working on the show liked. And you've got robots, animal themed robots, not animal themed robots. You've got, just goofy, silly stuff, tons of visual gags, silly references and tropes brought in from other styles of anime and just, robot history and stuff like that. It's just really
Hmm.
cool. And I really, really enjoy the first arc heavily, the first like 50 something episodes of Medabots. So,
So just to make sure you're
mhm.
aware, Will, um, the first disc, which is technically the first complete season, is only 26 episodes.
Am I thinking of the wrong thing?
And I think you might be actually conjoining first and second
Okay.
together.
I might be.
Because the second season, I think, is when they introduced Rakusho.
Oh, so that's considered season two? Okay, then yeah,
Yep.
season one and season two, which ends in a big hullabaloo, what's it? That is really, really, really good. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of episodes. Also, because this is a gag show, a lot of the storylines are sitcom-y, where you have what is it, status quo. So a bunch of stuff will happen, and then they'll return to the next episode. They're just going to school again. It's not everything is super huge and stakesy. However, all of the parts that he wins are kept tally of, and they do get brought up as things later on. He legitimately wins these parts that you see. They're not just there as a, oh yeah, he definitely won that part. No, you will see it come back.
They're not just
They're not just
trophies.
trophies. You will see them come back at certain points as part of other storylines. They will talk at one point about different metals and what their specialties are, because certain metals are meant to do certain things, which is why certain Medabots are good. Like if you pair a Medabot metal that has a penchant for like physical attacks with like Peppercat, that's a good pairing because it's going to want to run in, be super aggressive, get really in the face of the opponent. Whereas if you handed it a bunch of meta parts involving like long range fighting and shooting, it's going to be kind of crap because it doesn't have the right programming for like targeting and stuff like that. So
That sounds interesting. I can't wait to actually see it all show up together.
yeah, we're not done with the screws, man. There's going to be at least one or two
Oh,
episodes where you get a little deeper into the screw gang. So
well, I'm excited. So, before we finish this up and wrap up this episode, Will, did you have a good time this evening?
honestly, I did. Yeah, I love talking
I'm
about
glad to
anime.
hear it. So, we're definitely going to be doing this again next week. We're going to be doing episodes 4 through 6. Now, obviously, we're going to be posting on YouTube and on Spotify podcasts and wherever else you get your podcast listening. But I also want to make sure you guys are aware where you can actually pick up your Metabot
Hmm.
shows. According to Google, you can watch it on Amazon Prime with your premium subscription, your Prime subs, or you can watch it on 3 free channels: Tubi, Sling TV, and Freevee. So if anybody wants to watch it, with us, definitely
Can
check
you
it out.
queue those up and it's just with commercials, or are those like Pluto where it just randomly picks?
I think you can actually queue
Okay.
those up because Tubi, I remember when I was originally looking for it before I ended up buying the DVDs, you were able to queue
Okay,
them up.
that's good.
Kind of like how you were able to do with Common
Okay,
Runner.
that's good because I do recommend that rather than watching it out of order. Not that there's a ton of like consistency, but if you want to follow along with a very specific podcast doing these 3 episodes at a time, it will help to do that.
Absolutely. So, in the meantime, that's all that we've got for this particular show. So, yeah, that's it for Big Mecha, but not huge. Have a good night, everyone.